Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the second part of the event tonight, so please do take a seat. Could I ask our panellists to come to the front? That's Richard Spink. Okay, Richard's at the front. If we could also get Mr. Musa Jammeh and Mr. Simone Martinelli. Please put your hands together for our guests and for this discussion panel, which I hope will be very enlightening. So, ladies and gentlemen, the discussion tonight is going to be something that is obviously very relevant to all of you. The first question that we are going to ask our panelists and to get their views on is whether or not a cashless society is a myth. Now, let me just introduce our guests on the panel. They're seasoned professionals. We have Richard Spink of GBG, who is the Director of Channel and Partnership, IDV and Fraud at GBG. We have Mr. Musa Jammeh, CEO at MTBS, and the co-founder and CEO of Volume, Mr. Simone Martinelli. Please put your hands together for all of our panelists. So I'll come to the question, and I'll start with you, Musa, because it is a question about balance. How do you balance the need for innovation versus safety? And I suppose this question of a cashless society, do you think it's a myth?
I think it's a myth. I don't think that we'll ever have a cashless society. Simply because cash is also very convenient compared to all the things you need to do in a cashless society. Okay, even if it's a mobile app or you have to go on the web, all the things you need to do, I think cash is more convenient than them. Yes, it's going to reduce because of the risk. At a business level, it's going to reduce because it's risky. At a personal level, just as we see with banks being required to maintain cash machines at certain places, it's because there's always going to be cash. So I don't think it's going to disappear.
I suppose, well, I didn't need to be Jeremy Paxman there. You were just straight in there.
Yes.
No. There you go. So I'll ask the same question of you, Richard. What are your thoughts on this?
It's not a myth, but I mean, it could happen. But cash is obviously people want cash for various reasons, and if you're lucky enough to have enough of it, you don't need it, if that makes sense. But if you don't have enough of it, you need it. And if you look at organised crime, it thrives on the fact that people will do anything for cash. So there's good and bad there. There's obviously, in the short term, if you've got cash, you can buy anything you want, providing the price is right. Obviously, I'm talking to someone who doesn't carry cash, you know. So I do have a bit of cash on me, but very rarely.
I suppose as well, from your experience, you're looking more at the safety aspect of these particular transactions that take place from where you've come back from. So in terms of how safe we are with the innovations that are taking place in a cashless society, how do you feel about that?
I think we've got a long way to go. So in my world, we're a ID verification business. We've been doing ID verification for 20 years. Is there such a thing as So what that means is, in theory, you can identify someone very easily, but in practical terms, that digital identity token that is yours hasn't been created yet, and it feels like there's a long way from that being created. I mean, in India they have the Aadhaar, and that was, so that's an attempt at creating a digital identity. Do we have the same in the UK? No, we don't. Are we any closer to getting it? No, we're not. It doesn't feel like it anyway. Okay. So is cashless society a myth? Go back to answer the question. It's not a myth, but it would be great if it happened, because it would make the world a better place. The problem is who owns that process of of issuing digital tokens and securing that process. And that's the bit that's scary, because we're relying either on governments to do that or, at the moment, big internet companies.
Indeed, that is
I'm not sure if we trust them.
That is the big, I suppose, debate, isn't it? That, I think, is what we'd call a reserve judgment in the law.
Yeah, I'm very reserved. I like the idea of no cash, but I didn't like it when I was younger, I have to say. So because the more debt you have, then you don't actually want to put that to pay off the debt if you haven't got much money in the first place. So there's
I'll tell you now, as a lawyer, I don't mind cash either way. You just pay me however you pay me.
I'm
That's
happy
absolutely
with it.
fine.
I'm happy with it, yeah.
Excellent. And, of course, Simone, what are your thoughts on this particular topic area? Because obviously you've got volume and you're an innovator, effectively, doing new things in the industry, but also understanding that there is this transition. So tell us a little bit more about how you would approach it.
Well, not sure whether it's a myth or a reality. For sure, there has been a major shift from a cash to digital payment. One benefit that we still need to remember ourselves is that moving cash is much cheaper than moving digital payments. So whenever I go to a shop and I pay £20 to a shop, the shop receives £20. If we pay with digital payments, like thinking about Apple Pay or any other payment methods, there is a few hidden fees that are bringing power to a very large company instead of small and medium enterprises. So myth or reality? I'm afraid it's going to be a reality, but we need to watch who is winning in this game.
I suppose it's a question of how do you stop businesses becoming too big so that they become monoliths that you can't necessarily control. So it's the Big Brother society kind of scenario as well. Any thoughts on that, Musa?
I agree with both panelists that in the longer term, you'll have less and less cash. I think for convenience, from my perspective, people ordinarily would want to give it up. But it would be good the less we have of it from the perspective of risk. There is the question of trust, not just of who is issuing these digital currencies, but of how do we actually also manage the fraud around it. Because the more innovation you have, the more fraud opportunities there are also for fraud. So it's going to be a challenge, is what I think.
And just to sum up, what are your thoughts for the future? Are you hopeful for the future with regards to this?
I'm hopeful because personally I'm very interested in innovation. IT is not my background, but I dig around IT innovations a lot. And I quite like the idea of having just my mobile phone to do everything, including my cash. Mm-hmm. So I think it'd be a couple of years down the line, to get everyone comfortable and everyone secure to get to that level.
I'll ask the same question of you, Richard. What are your thoughts for the future in relation to this?
If you're optimistic, I think it's easier with a mobile phone. To your point, Musa, it's easier to manage everything on your phone. It's much easier. I used to do spreadsheets to work out how overdrawn I was, and now I don't have to do that because Apple will tell me I'm overdrawn. No, well, I'm still overdrawn, but I can handle it in a way I couldn't used to handle it, which is why I used to have to do spreadsheets. So I can see that I'm overdrawn the moment I buy a cup of coffee. And there's good and bad about that. But the reality is that's much better for everyone because you get a view of what your financial situation is. And the more you digitize that, the easier it is. So that's a good thing. But my reservation is the same thing that you mentioned, Simone, is who on earth is going to own this? Because I don't know. I mean, I just genuinely can't answer that question. And there are people, the technology exists to make everyone much safer as long as it doesn't get in the hands of governments. And governments aren't, at the moment, very good at doing what they say they're going to do. So.
Indeed. And Simone, for yourself?
The idea of we only pay with digital, in in certain country like the UK and within certain generation, Gen Z, for me it's already a reality. We're not that far from it. And probably the younger the generation, there might be a generation that will never see cash. Let's accept the fact.
Wow, that is quite a big statement. But there you go. I'm going to spread some fake news by saying that I was on a panel with Martinelli. So there you go. And so we're going to go to our second topic area because I think that was quite an important starting point. But there you go. Banking is a nightmare for MSBs. So being very specific now. I'll start with you, Simone.
I'll ask a question. How much time do you have for this topic?
Oh, yeah.
Let's start there.
Put the counter on.
Well, I'm pretty sure that this room is plenty of entrepreneurs and businesses that if we ask to raise a hand, whoever has at least one problem with the banking provider, we have a stadium sort of a wave of movement of hands.
Go on then, put your hands up. How many people here have had it? Have had a problem with a bank? Oh, wow.
One, don't be shy, we know.
Vishal, you're onto something, I'm telling you. Look at this. That organization is needed. Look at that. Musa, please, what are your thoughts in relation to this?
I think that is what they call a truism. It's true that I've not known an MSB, and I've been in it since 2007, that has not had a bank account closed. Those days, 2007, people are using personal accounts, any account, left, right, center. It has always been, as far as I know, a problem. And someone said to me, it's actually unfair on MSBs because look at it, our business is making third-party payments and we're not allowed to do this. The nature of MSB business is to make payment on behalf of another person. That's the service they provide. But that is considered the most risky one. As soon as that's what you are doing, the thing you are doing, then you have a problem. So it is a nightmare. The question is, should it be? At MTBS particularly, we think it shouldn't be. Okay, it shouldn't be a nightmare. First of all, because you should be able to make third-party payment, for instance, by default. Yeah, but also from the perspective of MSBs and banks, for every payment scenario, every risk scenario, there should be a control against it. Okay, for MSBs, banks are saying you are doing third-party payment. Yes, I'm doing third-party payment. This is how I control it. Yeah, you are doing this and that. You are going to that country. Yes, I'm going to that country. This is how I manage the risk. So as long as you are able to approach it that way, and you have someone at the bank who will listen to you, okay, which is another problem, I think you should be able to secure your bank account for long. MTBS, specializes in this. We are not a bank, but we specialize in banking as a service. We collaborate with banks, but our specialty is not the bank account itself. It's the risk management aspect of it. I think if MSBs approach it this way, that yes, the MSB sector by itself is risky. Okay, in the national risk assessment, an MSB straight away high risk. Okay, so, and I was speaking to someone who says, how do you do a risk assessment? You only have MSBs, so everyone is high risk. I said, yeah, but then we have controls. When we apply the controls to the high risk, that moves them from being high risk to at least minimum. Okay, so it's not that everything we are doing is high risk. So I think that it need not be if banks and MSBs will collaborate. Banks will listen, and MSBs will take a different approach. I know most of you do, to actually managing each risk characteristic. Okay,
Richard, you've got a chance to kind of swoop in here because your business could potentially be a broker here.
But what I would say is that risk piece is the last piece. You can't do the risk piece unless you've got the bank account. So, what I would say anecdotally is I've been working with MSPs for 12 years now. And when I first started was 2012, and I think that was when Barclays just said, right, we're not going to give bank accounts to MSBs. So when I first started talking to MSBs, the common request was, do you know anyone who will get me a bank account? And the qualifying question I used to ask people was, have you got a bank account? Because if they don't have a bank account, you're not going to be using any services to manage your risk. I think what I would also say in terms of managing risk is it's portrayed as being very complicated, whereas most of the time it isn't. The bits that are complicated are the edge cases where you're not sure. And that's your business to make a decision. So if you have to make a decision, you need to make sure you have enough evidence to back up your decision. You can't always make the right decision, but you look at, and you should think about your sector, the MSBs, and look at, has there been an example like Starling, for example? So Starling were fined last week. And if you look at what they were fined for, they were fined in very simple terms for not screening against a complete list of they were screening it against one UK sanctions list. And it might have been an oversight. It might have been just a technical oversight that someone had not switched it on, but it is astonishing.
Things get through the cracks. That's the point, right?
So, but there's enough software out there. It doesn't just have to come from GBG. There's enough software out there to manage risk. Risk isn't the so interestingly, that risk piece is, there's plenty of advice, plenty of people who give advice on that piece. I guess the positive thing is that it does feel, because I'm not asked that question, where can I get a bank account? It seems like the answer is easier to come by than it was previously.
It is easier now, I think the answer is easier now because, yes, I also got into this in 2007 because I was advising someone who was looking for bank accounts. And he eventually encouraged me to actually offer bank accounts because we can't find one. Says, look, we can't find this. Let's become a bank. Yeah, and just, provide the services along it. So, yes, I think people are still losing bank accounts, but I think it's easier to get them now than a couple of years ago when Barclays closed everyone. And
Simone, I want to ask you that question as well, in terms of how has your business adapted to the situation that you find with banks, and how is your relationship with banks?
We have fairly good relationship with banks. When we started our journey at Volume, we were definitely not thinking of offering a banking services, but given the challenges that we are mentioning here, it's part of our offering. The regulator as well has been pretty hard on banking institutions that we're not doing. I think the N26 example, it's a very good example of how you can have a bank account, you can have high-risk merchants, but you need to have the right control in place.
Indeed. Controls and practices. Indeed, the FCA handbook seems to be coming out at different points in time. There you go. We are going to open it up to some question and answers as well. Is there anyone in the audience that has any questions that they want to ask our panelists this evening? Anyone? It's that awkward silence. Either point. So whether it's to do with the banking as a nightmare, a cashless society, or if it's banking as a nightmare, you decide.
Hello. So in relation to the cashless society point, there's been actually a slight increase in cash used from 2021 to 2022. So that obviously it may have been due to COVID ending and lockdowns obviously ending as well. And what's your comment on maybe CBDCs when governments have been introducing these or trying to? Do you think that the public have been trying to think, okay, we're going to start using cash a bit more to try and conflict that and trying to go against that? Or, yeah, what's your opinion on that?
Very good question. Simone, why don't you start with that?
I think COVID made some changes in consumer dynamic that we were not expecting. If I remember well, at some point, we thought that we would never go back to a real-life event. There were a couple of startups that went to 1 billion valuation in a matter of weeks. the circumstances where we are right now, I think is not necessarily. I've been still on the way out of COVID. That changed a lot of the spending behavior across users.
I think the COVID thing is just, if you couldn't get hold of cash or couldn't go out, you didn't use cash. But if you look at the UK and compare it to Sweden, there's very little cash used in Sweden now. But Sweden is a much more cohesive society than the UK, so that probably has a lot to do with it. As for central bank digital currency, again, it's quite interesting because why wouldn't they do it? But I guess if you're in the US, you're probably scared about what the impact of that is going to be. Just because it's a massive unknown, isn't it? If you suddenly effectively call in your currency, but again, it would solve a lot of confusion. But I don't think. I think there's a lot of. It's just a big job, isn't it? It's a big job. I don't profess to know that much about it, but it's a massive job to do that. But you would want to do that because in theory then you're creating a ledger that exists and everyone can refer back to. Whereas at the moment there's a lot of uncertainty obviously around government spending in general. So if you can reduce that makes life easier for everyone. That's a very simplistic view there.
Musa?
Yeah, I think it's going to reduce. It's not going to disappear. But there's every drive from governments and technology fintechs to have less cash. But if you look at regulations such as the consumer duty, vulnerable customers, etc., we will have cash, is my view, for some time. I don't think the spike you saw will come back again. I think we are on a downward trend, but it will exist for some time.
I can tell you from dealing with the FCA to the point that the FCA are like, not you again. With dealing with businesses, often the case in terms of treating customers fairly is one of the biggest issues that always, whenever you look at the FCA's plans and what they're doing and what they're about to do, that's always at the heart and it's a central part of everything. And having access to cash and having access to kind of banking and services is always going to be an important issue. Are there any more questions that we've been given from the crowd?
Sorry, it's coming back to your cashless society. Is it not a question of when, not if? If we now look at where we are with cash, parts of China are cashless. I was in Shenzhen not so long ago. You can't go anywhere with cash. If you go in, we pay chat. Number of central banks are now giving out guidance into fintech and cashless societies, especially now if you're looking at the Qatar Central Bank and central banks of other countries. Switzerland is going that way as well. So is it not a question of, I think one of you said, I think maybe not my generation, maybe not my kids' generation, but one generation down, I think there'll be no cash. Would you not say it's a question of when, not if?
It's a very good question. I suppose it's also about catch-up. Some countries are going ahead, some countries are being left behind. Where do you feel the UK is in this particular space? And is it a case that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when? Simone?
Yes, maybe it was a bold statement talking about 2-3 generations down the line, but thank you for the example of China. It depends on the adoption, right? China's been with WeChat Pay, has been skyrocketing user adoption and engagement, and you can buy with WeChat Pay or Alipay, like from literally an apple on the street, they're your new fancy MacBook. And when the adoption gets so broad, obviously there is literally little incentives for everybody to bring cash. That's my 2 cents. I don't know, Richard and Musa, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so my argument for the existence of cash is always from perspective of consumer duty, consumer vulnerability. But as we progress, we will have less and less people who are unable to use this technology. More and more people will be able to use the technology. For instance, take AI. Okay, you can't type, yeah, you can't read, but you can speak, and AI can understand you. So we get to a point when you will pay just by telling the app to pay. Yeah. So yes, I think it's true that it's a question of when. When those vulnerable people, so we have less and less of them, and we have more technology like AI, where you can actually pay by just telling the app to pay, then it will disappear, because now there is nothing preventing you from using cashless devices.
Indeed. I suppose we could have some concluding remarks, I suppose, on this. We'll get your concluding remarks. What do you think? Unless there's any more questions from the floor. Go for it. Let me give you my mic.
Hi, good evening to all. I'm just referring the point Musa has just said some time back. It's not a situation when in 2012 Barclays said they wanted to close all MSBs accounts and all. Yeah, situation is better here now. A lot of APIs, human institutions are there who are opening the bank account supported by the bank behind. But just wanted to know, is there any guidance or regulations by FCA about the assurance of safety of the money being deposited with these kind of accounts? Who is responsible for the safety of these money?
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
I have all night. You can go ahead.
Do you, Simone? You'll know better than. You'll know better. I'll answer quickly. I mean, you know, as a consumer, I know that there's certain institutions where I can put up to £85,000 worth of savings. So
that's for retail.
I know, but I have no idea about consumer banking. But do you know, Musa?
I wouldn't say no, but I will try. I think when you look at safety and safeguarding, it comes in different forms. What he's talking about, the financial compensation scheme, is more for banks, and it relates more to consumers and small businesses. When you come to payment firms, APIs, SPIs, MSBs, they are not within that. Instead, you are covered under the safeguarding rules within the payment services regulations. Who is responsible? I think is a bit tricky when you have a lot of embedding and chains of providers. But my understanding is that each regulated entity is responsible for safeguarding their own customers' fund. So if you are an API and you have to safeguard, your safeguarding is your responsibility. You need to make sure that your funds are safeguarded. Your bank has a requirement to safeguard. The bank needs to make sure your funds are safeguarded. So to me, at each level, everyone needs to fulfill their own duties. And it's the same with even compliance. You'll find you will have to do your compliance. You come to us as a middleman, a platform owner, we do compliance. You go to the bank do compliance. And one thing is very common, businesses like BGB, you will screen against BGB, the same person. When you come to me and say, okay, I have to do my screen, I'll also screen against BGB. Yeah, he goes to the bank will also screen. But hey, it's the same person. But the regulation is such that it is applied to the regulated. Yeah, you are the one who is regulated. They put the onus on you to safeguard your customer's fund, and they give you the methods to do it. So you need to make sure you comply with that. Whoever is providing you services needs to comply with their own obligations. That's how I see it. So financial services compensation scheme, I think, is not really applicable in our scenario. It's more within the banking sector itself. That's my little understanding.
It means more or less it's not safeguarded actually, to be very, because in the past it had happened in quite few cases where such accounts or such organizations got busted and the money is lost.
Indeed. I mean, to be honest with you, if I'm wearing another hat, I'm unfortunately just wearing the presenter's hat tonight, but if I was wearing my lawyer's hat, I would have an answer for you, but it's going to cost you about $4.50 an hour for about 10 hours of work at least, okay?
I can afford $4.50 as far as I'm getting my money back.
There you go. There you go. Money well spent. But I would like to get our panelists' concluding remarks, because it's not just about this, but about the evening and the event, about seeing so many people come together tonight in the way that they have. I don't think this has been done before. It's a really unique opportunity and event for you to get to know sometimes people who may be your competitors are also actually in the same boat as you. A little bit about that, just some concluding remarks so that we can move on to the awards. Simone.
No, it's been great. I think Vishal has been done an amazing work, and other than obviously the business side is really coming together as a community. Most of the entrepreneurs that are in the room, they came in the UK, in London, with a dream, and some of them end up helping friends and family sending money back home, which is a very fulfilling and inspiring vision to share with everybody.
Indeed.
So thank you for this evening.
Musa?
I think this is really good. I think it's the first I see that focuses on MSBs and FinTech. I've gone to a few big ones, and all you see is big banks. Some of them, may understand MSBs, but I can see this place full of, very like-minded people. I think it's the first I've attended, to be honest. I'm not saying it has not happened before. So it's very, I think it's very, very good. Thank you, Visa and team.
Yeah, I'd echo what Musa and Simone have said. I just think it's great to see everyone in the room and talking, and especially putting names to faces as well. So I've met a lot of people in the room, but only over a Zoom or a Teams meeting. So it's really good just to be here and hear your stories as well. As I say, you're all entrepreneurs, which is something I'm not. So it's fantastic to talk to people like you. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. Please, ladies and gentlemen, can we give our panelists a massive round of applause? It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.